clean them up a bit. So this is the Monoembryonic. I'm going to just take some bypass pruners here, just cut off the ends. And you can see there's a little sleeve there. I'm just going to kind of press it like that to open it up. And what you can do is just peel these open. And this is just the husk that's around the seed. I find that if you dry these out, that's not beneficial. You can lose the viability of the seed that way. But you can see the seed is already starting to germinate inside the fruit. So if we wanted to plant the seed, we just go ahead and remove this skin that's around it. Just peel that off. And people generally do this just to help with the rooting process. The stuff just rots, this sheath that's around it. And be careful that I don't break the root here. Here we have the Valencia Pride, a much bigger seed. Same kind of process, just go ahead and cut off the ends here. Tear this open from the seam on the top. And look at that, this guy has already developed a root. You see that? The Valencia Pride, it was so juicy. I can see why it already started rooting from that juice. So definitely don't dry out your husks, because there's a good chance, especially with those juicy mangoes, that they're already in the process of starting roots. I like just cleaning up the husk, again, cutting the sides open, and then just pulling that seed out. So from here, I would just bury the seed that's been cleaned up, sheath has been removed, in a pot. You can lay the seed just flat, and the roots will find their way down and the stem up. Or you can actually plant them with the more broad point down in and this more narrow point up. This is the Monoembryonic, of course, and you can see that little node that started, that's actually the beginning of a root. So we can just plant this directly in a pot, 1 gallon pot. So you can plant this very shallow towards the surface, just barely cover this. Roots are going to form and go down, and then conversely a stem is going to shoot up above the soil line, and then it'll start leafing out. And in general, I see these germinate within 10 days. Sometimes they're faster. This seed is going to definitely be faster, just because it's already started the germination process. You can see that root has already emerged, it's gone down. And once this gets potted into soil, again, there'll be a stem that emerges out from near the roots and goes up. But these are both monoembryonic varieties, that's why you can see just one embryo, just one solid embryo on these. They will not be true to type. All right, like with the others, I'm gonna go ahead and cut it open. I just washed it and kind of rubbed it down with the paper towel so it doesn't slip. But again, we're gonna just nip off the ends with some bypass pruners. Make sure those are sharp. Just kind of get your fingers in there and pull apart. There's our seed. Again, we have this film on the top here. This is a polyembryonic, so we should see more than one embryo in here when we peel this off, unlike the other varieties. So yeah, you can see it's not uniform. It's got 2 regions in it here. Sometimes the stem just doesn't have the support to even emerge out, and so you'll only see the single stem. Other times you'll see multiple stems and some will die. And then other times you'll see equal vigor on multiple stems, so it just depends. Each seed is different, but we'll definitely be putting this in some soil and sprouting it. Right, so we are now in my garage. This is where I actually start the propagation process for the mangoes. Once I remove the seed, and put it in the soil media. So on soil media in here, I've got just a 1-to-1 mixture of Canadian peat moss, just the normal stuff that you would get at the big box store, and also some pumice and perlite. You don't have to do a mix of pumice and perlite, I just happen to have both. Really the main difference between those 2 materials is how large the pieces are. Pumice tend to be a little bit larger stones than perlite. Perlite tends to be smaller in grain. But basically you just want something that will help with the aeration and drainage. So I find that to be a good mix. So what I want to point out about this is the soil depth. So you can see it's just practically exposed. It's just so lightly covered. That's all you want to do. You don't want to plunge this down deep. The seed should just be near the surface, the top of that seed. Or if you're going to do it sideways, the side of that seed. Just barely exposed almost to the top. So that's the planting depth you're trying to go for. If you bury them too deep, they're going to just rot out. So not even 20 days later, this is what you can see. Generally, I'll start to see germination happen within 10 days, where the sprouting will start happening, where you can see the stem emerging through the soil up through the top. So you can see that kind of reddish looking stem. That is going to be the main trunk of this Valencia Pride, as just starting to unfold here. And then that'll start pushing leaflets as well. So really all I'm doing here is creating a mini greenhouse. We are in the garage where it's not a whole lot of light. I do have some racking here that has my hydroponics going, my lettuces, but you can see in this area they're not really in the light here. So it's a good place. It also is quite warm in the garage. I don't have AC in here. Right now it's 94 degrees in here, and it'll get as hot as 100 degrees depending on the weather outside. And that's actually a perfect environment. You want something that's warm and humid. So for the humidity aspect, because we are not humid, I'm using just saran wrap on top here. And you can use a rubber band, tie, anything. I've got the green tape here. It's just what I had, just to keep that sealed up well. And that traps in the humidity and helps with the germination process. Leave it in this state until that stem hits the top of the plastic. At that point you can take the plastic off. I tend to leave them in the garage just air exposed for 1 day. Just pop them over here where they're getting some artificial light. These are, fairly good powered grow lights, so they're getting a nice dose of sunlight. And then if they look good a day or two, no issues, then I just move them outside. And then I just put them in my shade house where I have all my other tropicals that's under 80% shade cloth. So here's another one that I started on the same date, 7/9. You can see it's not really as far along. There's some activity happening in there. This is the Maha Chinook. It hadn't germinated in the fruit like the Valencia Pride, but it's coming along. Some of them are a little slower than others. So this one here is a cotton candy. This was germinated more recently, 7/21, so it hasn't even been 10 days yet. But we can see the start of one stem coming up. And because this is polyembryonic, there is a chance that we're going to see more than one tree emerge out of this, more than one stem. And those will be potentially, slightly different. They could be, depending on whether that portion of the seed was true to parent or not. But this one has, multiple embryos, so therefore multiple chances of stems coming up. Now these 3 I just did yesterday. These are the Malika, Sweetheart, and then we got a Keck here. Now even though I just did these, you can see the Malika is already starting to pop open the seed here, and probably is going to be the front runner with the stem. So these can, again, vary on how fast you'll see some action, but by 10, 12 days, you should start to see something happening in the soil. So now we're headed out to look at a couple seedlings that are a little further along that I use the same process for. This was a fruit that I got to enjoy on July 5th. Promptly, planted that seed, started the process, and you can see it's grown pretty nicely. We're about 20 days later, which is not that much time at all. Again, this is a monoembryonic variety, so we just got the single stem here, but decent growth. And I just have this guy situated in the shade here. I really do recommend that. You do not want to fry these seedlings when they're little like this. You want to definitely baby them and not put them in the sun, especially in our climate here in Arizona during our hell summer period. Here we've got another mango, a Carrie, that I enjoyed again on 7.5. Planted the seed. Now this one looks like I planted the seed sideways. I believe I did on both of those. And so you can see the stem just found its way up, which is fine. Something has been munching on these leaves, but this one's doing well too. And all I'll say is, if you do want to put this in the ground, I definitely would not suggest doing it when they're this young. I did make that mistake and planted out seedlings in the ground when they were only a couple months old, and they have grown very slowly, and I even lost a couple just because they're so fragile. I really would suggest growing them out for a year, where they're at least to something like this size. And as far as fruiting, you might be hesitant to grow a mango tree from seed, not knowing if it's true to type. I really don't think I've ever had a bad mango, so if you're like me, I don't think that's really a concern. And then the other aspect is the concern that you won't get fruit as soon. It'll take 10 years for you to finally enjoy a piece of fruit. And what I'll tell you with that is, generally people say within 5 to 6 years, their seedling is producing fruit. And if you think about it, if you buy a 3-gallon grafted mango, most people are waiting 3 years anyways for that to fruit. So really you're not saving that much time buying a grafted tree. And the seedlings do far better in the ground than a grafted tree, at least in my experience. So I hope this video was helpful. If you too are thinking about growing a mango tree from a fruit that you ate, let me know if you have questions. Thanks for watching, and happy gardening.